right, we're going to get started in about 1 minute. Thanks everyone for joining us. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ELGL Homelessness Policy Summit. And you're joining our second session featuring Sam Dodge from the City of San Francisco. My name is Kirsten Wyatt, and I'm the Executive Director of the Engaging Local Government Leaders Network, or ELGL. We are a Big Tent local government organization, and we work to connect, communicate, and educate our members on a variety of local government topics, and today is no exception. Without fail, we hear from our members that their city and county organizations are seeking better solutions to address homelessness in their communities. As ELGL strives to be topical and relevant, we wanted to bring together some of the best minds working on this policy issue in local government, and using this webinar platform allows our members nationwide to learn from them. Before we begin, I want to let you know that your microphones and conference phones are muted, and this makes the webinar enjoyable and efficient for everyone. After the presentation is finished, we will open up for some questions, and these may be submitted using the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen, and Ray Trotta from Trotta Consulting will moderate them for our presenter. I'd also like to thank Strategic Government Resources, or SGR, for their partnership, which has given us the ability to record our webinars so you can watch them later and share them with your colleagues. We'll compile a record of all of the tweets from the webinar, as well as the recording and the slide decks used by our presenters, and we'll post this on elgl.org for your review and sharing. We will be live tweeting today's webinar, and you can follow along with the hashtag ELGL Summit, and be sure to use the Twitter handles for today's participants. And so with that, I want to hand it over to Ray Trotta, our moderator for today's event. Ray is a policy consultant on homelessness, and she's the ELGL member who first proposed today's agenda. If your organization is looking for strategic guidance on homelessness solutions, please reach out to Ray, and you can find her online at raytrotta.com. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Ray.
Thanks so much. Hi there. I think it's working. I just got an odd message. Hi, everyone. My name is Ray Trotta. I'm calling in from Portland, Oregon today. I'm a public health consultant, as Kirsten mentioned, and I work in strategy, assessment, and community engagement with regard to the issue of homelessness. My background is in direct social service, so I've worked in health and housing in a number of different ways with folks experiencing homelessness, and that brought me to the public health policy side that leads me to do the work I'm really excited about now. And I was able to moderate the first session talking with Seattle about the intersections between substance use and homelessness in unsheltered populations. And within that session, unfailingly, the Navigation Center was mentioned as a best practice and a program that others are looking to. I've heard about the Navigation Center so many times, and I'm really excited to learn from them today, and also hear some questions about how this model might translate to other cities. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam.
Hey everyone, just sit tight for 1 minute. We're going to make sure that Sam has his microphone and everything working so we can learn from him.
All right, can you hear? Oh, great. All right. So let's.
Sam, this is Ray, the moderator. I think that you are muted. So if you could unmute, hopefully we can hear you, and I will text in the chat box if we can hear you when you come on. Thanks. Sorry, everyone. We're just trying to work out the slight technical difficulties. Thank you.
Is this working better?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
Yes. All right. You can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thanks,
Okay.
Sam.
Sorry. Jeez. So I don't know if you got any of what I was just talking about. Probably not. So I'm just going to say that the Navigation Center is trying to be strategic about our whole system and how we're using our scarce resources to try to make the biggest impact on homelessness in our community, to really make these supportive housing opportunities real for those that are longest term homeless. We know our longest term homeless are largely out on the street and out of care, and that we have to kind of align with their own motivations to make these opportunities real for them. We knew that we had to build upon the good work that's been done in Philadelphia and New York, where they had outreach programs and had aligned their housing resources and created these interim housing spaces. In New York, it was the Safe Haven programs, and that really inspired what we were trying to do with the Navigation Center. And it also inspired us was some of the local knowledge and practices that we had seen people having difficulty coming into shelter because of their possessions or the barriers to entry because of significant others and pets. And so we kind of combined these notions together and brought in a lot of experimentation to make navigation centers. And now we have 2 open and 2 more in the pipeline. This is a picture of one that's going to be opening in the southeast part of the city. It's a neighborhood called the Dog Patch along the central waterfront, and it should be opening in March. San Francisco has a pretty significant homeless population, and it's a very small city. And as there's been kind of pressures from new development, and it's kind of squeezed up where people can find refuge on the streets of San Francisco. And so, while we've had relatively consistent point-in-time counts for the last decade, it doesn't feel that it's been the same. It feels very intense. And this was part of the motivation behind the navigation centers was that we needed to find new ways to kind of serve people on the street. And with the backdrop of, various laws and court decisions, we knew, you have to do the right thing, and that, we can see a lot of progress through targeting the longest term homeless and the most vulnerable. We started with the first navigation center in a former school site with, at 1950 Mission Street in San Francisco, and we've served over 1,000 people now. This number is a little bit old, and it's been really exciting to be able to see, and it's been very helpful to demonstrate that, as a homeless service system, we can house the hardest to house, that we are competent and worthy of further investments. Here I go through just some of the elements that make a navigation center what it is. We're targeting the longest term homeless on the street. We're making sure that it's a welcoming environment, and that the realization that those that are street homeless are making the big change in their life, and that our job is to really bring those opportunities up close to them. While they're going to be doing the hard stuff, we're going to be doing, just make these opportunities available to them. And part of that welcoming environment is not having a curfew, is having not a set meal times, that people can access food when they're hungry, that the dormitories are 24-hour quiet spaces so people can access them when they need to, and if they aren't taking care of their appointments, and that, to get someone from street homeless without IDs and income into housing, it's almost 30 discrete appointments that they have to make it through. And so we make those as much as possible on site. And it's a small environment, which means that we don't have security staff on site. And saving on security staff means that you can have a higher staff ratio. So the physical components are not that different from a shelter, maybe a very nice shelter. We try to have some outdoor space so people can congregate and relax, and that it's, it's a 24-hour program. We bring in various government services to on-site as, like a roving medical team, and like our entitlement programs, and try to do as much as we can on site. We also got a weekly DMV appointment so that people could come with their case managers, and we could do like 6 people at a time and get their IDs. So we wouldn't have to wait like 2 hours or more at the DMV, which was very challenging for a lot of our people. So this is the original navigation center, and if you went to public schools in the 80s, or you might recognize like some of these kinds of trailers. This is a site that's slated for permanent affordable housing development for families, and we didn't know how long we were going to be able to pop up in this spot, but it's looking like that we will get another year there, just as they take time to get their entitlements and get their financing together. We've been able to house almost 80% of the people that come in there. Here is the second navigation center that we opened. This is a residential hotel that's slated for redevelopment into affordable housing again, and its project timeline is kind of uncertain, but we knew that we would get it for at least 2 years. And it's a 152 unit residential hotel. It has some permanent residents that are going to be able to move on to the new development, but it had 93 spaces that we could use as a navigation center. And this is totally aligned with our coordinated entry system for federally supported affordable housing. And it's been just going since June, but it's been really great. And we had to remodel some of the ground floor spaces to make community spaces and meal spaces. And it's been a real success. Here's the dog patch one. You can see that we were inspired by this idea of modularity, that we could pop up in various locations slated for development. What we did was vacate a dead-end street and change some zoning rules to get this approved. And it's going to have a one-level wooden deck that will link all these trailers together so that the whole thing will be accessible. And our chronically homeless population is very disabled, and so making these spaces accessible is very important. This one's gonna align with coordinated entry as well, and I was just there yesterday, and it's looking very good. Here is our fourth navigation center that we're planning to open, and this is in the South of Market neighborhood. We'd done an RFI to look for providers to work in navigation centers, and for any organizations that had buildings that they were willing to lease for navigation centers. And Salvation Army came forward with this 22,000 square foot space. And it's going to be great. It's 2 floors, so it needs an elevator, which is going to make the rehab pretty substantial. We've been able to raise $5 million to do the work. San Francisco is very expensive, but we're excited, and we plan to use this like a triage, so that we can work with people to bring them in directly from street encampments, and kind of work with them to see where they align in our coordinated entry system. So if they don't match to housing priority, they can get a 3-month shelter reservation, and we can work on the entitlements and benefits with them, along with seeing other opportunities that might be there to reconnect with family, or take advantage of work programs or others that may help them end their homelessness. And this was a site that's been underutilized for a long time. So this is the spread of the various navigation centers. You can see the Dogpatch Navigation Center in the lower right-hand corner, the original Mission one, and the second one, which is that residential hotel, and the fourth one, which is the Salvation Army. And that's that. I want to take some time and hear your questions. I think that there's a lot of confusion about navigation centers, but it's rather simple notion that we should be making spaces available to align our coordinated entry preferences to those that are street homeless. And part of doing that is to make them attractive and to make them work for those that are street homeless. And this has been a very successful experiment, and I hope to see other cities implement it and have success with it. And it's a pretty flexible model, and I'm curious to see how other cities put their own flavor and instincts and knowledge to work in building navigation centers.
Thanks so much, Sam. It is great from Sam perspective. I as an expert in the field, I know that you guys have gotten a ton of press, and I've read, different articles about the inception of your mission. But I was wondering if you could share with this audience a little bit about the collaboration I assume you likely did with the service organizations already in place prior to navigation centers, and specifically some of those more outreach or harder to reach population serving organizations to help you guys form an effective model from the start?
What had been the tradition in San Francisco is that homeless outreach was done by the Department of Public Health and through their contractors, and shelter and most of the housing was done by the Human Services Agency and their contractors. And so in the original navigation center, we worked with Episcopal Community Services, which is our big shelter provider, and they're an amazing provider. And they were flexible enough and experienced enough that they were able to bring a lot of their instincts to making the program work. It took some time to kind of digest some of these ideas of low thresholds, kind of meeting people where they are, harm reduction approach to service provision. But that's an ongoing dialogue that we need to have within all of our services. So I think that was good. Our homeless outreach team is done, primarily by one city contract, but there are a number of other outreach programs, and we've been able to collaborate with them at various times to approach different kind of difficult encampments and help people trust that this was going to be a good opportunity for them to take advantage of.
Great. And a follow-up to that, you also highlighted local knowledge as important to your process. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And as you said, it's likely ongoing, but could you share a little bit of your guys' strategy and engagement?
Well, our traditional shelter system only allows people to come in with 2 bags and had very limited storage capacity for those that are experiencing homelessness. And whether it caused their homelessness or it came about during their homelessness, but the instinct had been that there was a lot of people that had tremendous amount of possessions and weren't, by the time you kind of collect up what you need to survive on the street, it's hard to let go of that for a short-term shelter stay. And so we wanted to really see how we could maximize storage, and we brought in shipping containers and at the original navigation center and had 4 of them, so that people could give us a shot and bring all the possessions that they wanted, and then we work with them while they're there to downsize to what they could really use in an efficiency apartment, an SRO, where it's the destination for a lot of the housing exits for people there. And that was a good process because they didn't have to give up everything to give us a shot. Excuse me. I think maybe one thing I didn't make clear enough is that this is an invite-only program. So we are inviting in people. It's not like people show up and say, I want to come into the Navigation Center. No, we're working to invite in people that we're targeting. So I see from Twitter there's a question about security, and it's worked out really well not to have security on staff there. Security is really more of a team approach or de-escalation, and that there's case aides, people that are working in the front and signing people in and helping with cleaning up and helping with serving meals. And they kind of work with the program to make sure that they're kind of keeping an eye on everyone and de-escalating things and holding people accountable. And if something really does jump off, the security staff that we have, at least in San Francisco, can't put hands on people. They need to call the police. So it's really a much better use of our limited funds to have more case aides than to have security staff that's not doing anything 99% of the time.
And about the security, you had mentioned smaller facilities, and can you just repeat again about the size of staff to folks coming in?
Yeah, it's about 15-1 case management ratios, which is great. And the staffing levels change during the day. There's more staff on there at day than in the middle of the night, but it's been very rich staffing. I think the highest, I think it's altogether 5-1, but the people aren't there at all the time, all the staff.
It looks like we have another question in from Twitter. How does the invite-only approach work, and how are targets determined?
We try to target the longest term homeless, and we try to work with some of the most difficult encampments that our general outreach and services haven't been able to make progress with. And at a certain point, there's just so much encampment activity in San Francisco that there's a lot of ties, and we have to just kind of see what we can make the most progress with. But so far, we haven't had a hard time choosing areas to work.
Can you talk a little bit about, so the Navigation Center and a lot of our responses right now are, of course, of reaction. So we have hard to reach folks, we have visible homelessness, and we're responding with better integration and, like you said, lower barrier resources. Can you talk a little bit about how maybe in long-term planning, this is combining with prevention work with these targeted populations to prevent folks from ending up in these scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we have is a lot of cleanup work to do in our communities, where we have people with lengths of homelessness like 10 and 20, and we've even had individuals with 30 years of homelessness in their lifetime come through the Navigation Center. So it's really at the far end of the distribution of experiences of homelessness that we're focusing our efforts when it comes to Navigation Centers. Because the propensity to maintain, to be homeless next year goes up and up as you've been homeless longer and longer. And so the real need to make progress on homelessness demands that we focus our higher end interventions on those that have been the longest term homeless. And we've had 100% transfer rate for those that are the longest term homeless and those that have disabilities. So for HUD funding and others, it's been a very simple, actionable, and meaningful proxy for all the various situations that people find themselves dealing with when they're homeless. Our overarching goal is to try to build a system that makes homelessness a 90-day experience for everyone, that rehouses people rapidly. We've done a lot of piloting with rapid rehousing for families, and we're trying to do that with single adults. And some of these prevention ideas are really about like how to get people back into housing with the necessary supports so that they can transition in place into an apartment that they can afford, which is hard in a market like San Francisco. But if we look broader to the larger Bay Area, we've had some good success. But those that are facing multiple crises in their life, mental health and physical health, supportive housing has been very important. But we also are working to make moving on programs so that it's not a lifetime sentence to be in our supportive housing programs, that when people recover and are ready to move out on their own, that opportunity is there for them, because we have plenty of people behind them that need that kind of intensive resource.
Looks like we have a follow-up question from our first session where we talked to City of Seattle about the links between homelessness and substance use in unsheltered populations. Can you talk a little bit about how Navigation Center is addressing this link?
We do come in as take people as they are. Building off of New York City's experience with safe havens, they had three main rules, which were, no violence, no weapons, no drug or drinking on site. We've tried to use the opportunities if someone is chaotic in their drug use or substance abuse, to make sure that we talk to them about that and make opportunities available for them to go into residential treatment. And then they're able to return right back to the Navigation Center where they were, right out of residential treatment. And this way, they are kind of continue on their progress towards housing. But if people are able to make their appointments, and even if they are, using drugs, then that's okay. That their longer term work is going to happen in their housing, and that we found that that's just generally true. That harm reduction works, that once people are stably housed, that their substance abuse eventually does go way down and becomes much more manageable, and people are able to take advantage of treatment programs and ultimately abstain from drug use. So that's kind of the approach we've tried to take. Now, it's a mixed population, right? And so we really do ask that people don't use substances on site. But if people are found using substances, it's just really a chance to engage, and it's not an automatic, losing your stay.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We've definitely found that in our work here in Portland, Oregon. Even working with folks, if sometimes you're able in a medical clinic to give a voucher for a hotel, let's say for a week, and we found with our opiate users that even in that short time, it was way, way less just to have, a roof over their shoulder for a week, which is pretty impressive, and definitely, what you guys are working with at the Navigation Center. So please, listeners, keep chatting in your questions. We have quite a bit more time here to address questions, so please, anything you'd like to ask. We have a question here about public perception when the city has submitted land use applications for various navigation centers. What was the most effective outreach technique?
we had used a couple of techniques. I mean, we went door to door to really deliver notices to people before they got anything from the city about us trying to open a program, and hosted community meetings early and often. I think it helps this idea of it being temporary at the Mission Navigation Center and at the 2012th Street, this one. And those are both temporary facilities. 2 years for the Civic Center Navigation Center. And we didn't really know how long we were going to be at the Mission Navigation Center. Initially, we said maybe 6 to 9 months. We didn't know how long it was going to take, and it's going to take almost 2.5 years. So I feel bad that we misrepresented how long we were going to be there, but I do think that we haven't had complaints from the neighbors once we've been there. It's been well received, but that can be a really vulnerable time for a program, and opening up homeless service center sites is really, really difficult in San Francisco, just as I'm sure it is in all of your communities. I think one of the things that we've focused on is finding champions. Homelessness is very visible and visceral in our community, and there are people that see it as a real opportunity for their community to be a part of changing hundreds of people's lives. And that has been something that's resonated with a lot of community members and helped to reframe what we're doing with a homeless service center site, and to help people own some of the real beauty that we get to experience in our homeless service, homeless services, that we are seeing people change their lives all the time, right? Move into housing, turn around decades of real trauma and abuse. And, to tell that story is really important. I think that what often ends up is that people speak from a lot of fear in San Francisco, and I imagine this other town, about homelessness and homeless individuals, and are worried that when you build something that more will come, kind of a field of dreams kind of idea. But we're able to use data and to really tell our stories and to be transparent with what we're doing and how we're doing it, to help people understand all the good work that's being done and how people are really getting housed and leaving homelessness behind.
Thank you. I just want to add that I definitely think, although like you said, it might be a misrepresentation at first, a temporary site license is such a good idea, because you overcome maybe your council's fear that you are going to need increased security, or there's going to be increased violence, behaviors, etc. And then you can really evaluate and communicate the success, if there is success, hopefully, of your project as it's going on, and then it dispels that, and folks probably want to keep it going. So I think that's really positive. We have a follow-up question to the last one, and it's 2 parts. The first part is, has the city done any research or studies on property values after a navigation center opens? And then the second part is the San Francisco market adjusting positively or negatively to the centers?
The San Francisco housing market is insane. We haven't done any studies, but the year-over-year increases continue in all these neighborhoods pretty dramatically. So I wouldn't be surprised that it's had a very positive impact on that there's been housing price inflation or property inflation around them. I don't know. I wouldn't attribute it to the navigation centers as much as just general market. But we know we haven't done that study.
We still have about 20 minutes left if folks have questions that they're dying to have answered. And I'll keep looking at the chat box to see if anything comes in. And if it doesn't, I would assume we could end early. I had a follow-up question, and now I'm trying to find it in my notes. I think originally, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, when I read about the Navigation Center at first, I think I heard and read that you guys got some private funding or match funding to begin your first center.
Yeah.
And I know you talked about different champions, and could you talk a little bit more about how you've used the business community and businesses affected by visible homelessness to support this effort?
Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous wealth in our community, and there was an anonymous donor who donated $3 million, and the idea was to do something about homelessness. And my experience with, I used to run street outreach programs in New York, and so my experience with the outreach programs in New York was that it was instrumental to have these safe havens to be able to link outreach work with housing and to make these opportunities real for them. So we knew that we wanted to try to replicate that in San Francisco. And this donor made their donation through the San Francisco Interfaith Council, which helps us with our winter sheltering programs. And so they've been, a really great partner, and the San Francisco Interfaith has been really embedded with the project since day one, along with Episcopal Community Services. And I think that really helped. I mean, to do new programs, it helps to have new money, right? I mean, it's very hard to cut programs to do new things. So that was really like a shot that we had to try to demonstrate that we could do homeless services in a new way, in a coordinated way, in a rational way that makes more progress than our previous kind of collection of boutique programs managed by 5 different departments in the city. And ultimately, it was this experiment with the Navigation Center that inspired our mayor to form a Department of Homeless Services to unite all our various programs under one department. And so I think I really put it all back to this donation, and it really helped us infuse a lot of experimentation and best thinking into a model project. And I think that the question was from reporters initially was, is this a Potemkin village? Is this just a demonstration of how good it could be, but everything else kind of is horrible? And we were saying, no, this is kind of a Trojan horse. This is where we show the good work that's being done in the homeless service system, and that we help spread the learning through the rest of the system. And we're doing that right now in the Unified Department.
Thank you. That's an awesome outcome of a private-public partnership. We have a question from California. What do you think is the scalability of a navigation center to smaller cities that don't have the financial resources or county-level facilities that San Francisco has seen?
Yeah, I think that it is scalable, but it could just be adapting some of these ideas to existing programs, where it's like maybe preferencing the longest term homeless for your scarce housing, or bringing in shipping containers so that and siting them someplace so that people can store bulky belongings to come into your system of care, or allowing at the Mission Navigation Center, we allowed mixed gender dorms and allowed couples to push their beds together and to snuggle at night. And these were kind of ideas that had not been experimented with in our system, and that really helped to signal to the clients that we're trying to respect them as adults, and that they're going to be the ones making the big change, but we're going to try to make it as comfortable as possible while they take care of this hard change. And I think that any community could try to unlock the potential of the staffing in our homeless service system by allowing them to really be part of someone changing their lives, and less so just micromanaging little rules, and try to see what rules we can get rid of and maybe, improve our programs, but at least do just as well with a little more accommodating and welcoming environment.
We have another question here in reference to the effort that the media in San Francisco and the Bay Area made to focus on homelessness. I believe it was last summer, but you can elaborate on that. Can you say if this helped or affected your work in any manner?
Well, it definitely affected my work. I mean, on June 29th, the San Francisco Chronicle led kind of 80 news organizations to all spend that 29th focusing on homelessness. And, this kind of dog days of summer, it was, normally there's not a lot of press at that time, but it did help, I think, because homelessness is, as we know, those who work in it, it's very complex. It's at the crossroads of a lot of society's failures and a lot of our morals about who we are and what we can do. And, we try to put the message out there as much as possible that homelessness isn't necessary and that we have the technologies to change it. And we know that supportive housing and rapid rehousing and public housing, that these interventions really work. Section 8, they really work to help, end homelessness for people. And so we try to use these opportunities when the press wants to talk about homelessness to really talk about what's necessary and what's optional as a community. And there's only so much we can do in a city, even as rich as the city is San Francisco, but together as a nation, we can demonstrate programs that work. And as we demonstrate that this is possible, it becomes harder for people to deny that it's necessary. And we start to move towards a place, hopefully, where we won't have the mass scale of homelessness that we do have in this country right now. And, if we look at other developed countries, you don't see this kind of homelessness. It's a very uniquely American phenomenon. And as the richest country in the world, it's not necessary. So we try to stay in that space when talking to the media, but there is a lot of gotcha stories and there's a lot of frustration that needs to be voiced by the media for our community. So it's usually a mixed bag. But I was very impressed with the June 29th. There was a follow-up media day in early December. It didn't catch on quite as big as the last one, but I've seen in Seattle and San Diego and others that they've done these kind of unified media days. And I hope that it's been helpful and that it's helped tell the story that basically we can do this. It takes, housing is expensive, but, people's lives are worth it.
We have about 10 minutes left. If you have any other questions, please type them into the box. As a follow-up to the media story, I think I was in the Bay Area in December, and I think I may have seen that follow-up that you mentioned. And at least in Oakland, I saw a paper that sort of summed up. I think they did a front page kind of summary of the homelessness issue, and their editorial board sort of took the stance that social services in the Bay Area were wasting money and they were ineffective, and that basically we needed to make those services better. I would assume that is probably an understatement of the complexity of what is going on, but I'm wondering if you could talk at all about that and how the Navigation Center is interacting with others who may get that critique about their programs.
Yeah, I mean, one of our things when we opened the first Navigation Center was to really embed the city's controller office, which does the auditing, and it's an independent agency and does monitoring. And usually it does monitors and audits programs like 2 years afterwards. And we were really saying, like, let's build the system so that we can have live dashboards every week so that we can share what we're doing. And that was very helpful. And so we could really show like a cost per outcome, and we could show the successes. I mean, the media, I feel like this is too much money. You know, in San Francisco, we spend, somewhere in the range of $240 million a year serving people that are homeless or formerly homeless. That includes our supportive housing stock and healthcare and the police costs and a lot of different things in there. But, in one way that sounds like a lot of money, but San Francisco is a city and county, and it's got a $10 billion budget. And $240 million is really a small part of the overall budget when it's the city's number one pressing issue. So I think that for people who don't know, the Bay Area is 9 counties, a number of cities. San Francisco is a city and county, but it's only 46 square miles. There's a lot of balkanization between our different communities, and there ends up being kind of concentrations of services in some places and none at all in other places. And we have looked to say that we should have a more coordinated regional programs around homelessness, but other communities have really taken this moment of crisis that we're in, this extended years of crisis, to really push for radical changes. So Santa Clara passed a really ambitious, almost $1 billion housing bond with $700 million dedicated for extremely low income housing. And that was in November. And Alameda County and Oakland both passed measures for supportive housing this last November. Napa and Sonoma are both doing really great stuff getting their programs organized. So I think that there's some things to be hopeful for. And I do see us partnering closer amongst all our neighboring counties going forward.
I think we're wrapping up here. Thank you so much, Sam, for offering up these great perspectives. I think you did a great job of showing that there is a lot of focus and resource in California, and others might not have that capacity or will, political and private will, to fund such programs. I think you showed a lot of examples of incremental steps that folks can take to make the homeless scene just a lot more hospitable, like you said, to working with folks where they're at, bringing them into new models of service, and collaborating in new ways to make a difference. So thank you so much. I think Kirsten is going to come on here as well, but I just want to say thank you. That was great.
And so, yeah, as Ray mentions, we've come to the end of today's webinar, and a huge thanks to Sam for a great presentation. And Sam, I know you're not feeling that great today, so we want to send you all of ELGL's collective healing vibes so you feel better soon. I want to thank Ray for her moderation of today's event. And to all of our members, thanks for participating and sharing your time with ELGL. And as a reminder, we've recorded this webinar and it will be available online soon at elgl.org. You can also reference the hashtag ELGL Summit on Twitter to review and share your thoughts from today's discussion. I'm also pleased to share that we've made that hashtag trend up here in Portland. So thanks to everyone who's been sharing their thoughts and reflections. We really think that today's Policy Summit is making a difference. And so with that, I'm going to end today's webinar. If you're staying online for our next session with Andrew Henning from the city of San Rafael, California, he'll be talking about smaller city solutions to homelessness. That begins at 11:30. But we are going to close this webinar and then start the new one, same web address for our recording purposes. So with that, thank you everyone for your support of ELGL, and especially thank you, Sam, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my honor.